The question is simple. When did we stop being apes and start being human? But the answer isn't. There was no single moment, no lightning strike. No ape stood up one day, looked at its hands, and decided to be a person. It was a slow, messy, and gradual process. It took millions of years. And to be honest, the question itself is a bit of a trick. We never stopped being apes. We are apes. We belong to the great ape family, along with chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. Our DNA proves it. Our bodies prove it. So the real question is different. The real question is, what happened on our branch of the family tree that made us so different from the others? When did our ape ancestors start down the path that led to us? To find the beginning, we have to go back a long way. Maybe 6 or 7 million years. Back then, in Africa, there was a population of apes. They were probably comfortable in the trees and on the ground. They were the ancestors of both modern chimpanzees and modern humans. They weren't chimps and they weren't humans, they were just what they were. But things were changing. The climate was changing. The vast forests of Africa were beginning to shrink. Patches of grassland called savanna started to open up. For an ape living in the trees, this was a problem. The distance between one patch of forest and the next was getting bigger. You had to spend more time on the ground, out in the open. And this is where we see the first big step, the first real move away from a standard ape life. To walking on two legs, we call it bipedalism. It sounds simple, but it changed everything. Why walk on two legs? Well, maybe it helped to see over the tall grass to spot predators or find food. Maybe it was more energy efficient for covering long distances between tree patches. Maybe it freed up the hands. This is a big one. An ape walking on its knuckles can't carry anything. An ape walking on two legs can. It can carry food, it can carry tools, it can carry a baby. The first creatures we know of that started doing this were very, very early. We have fossils from species like Sahelanthropus and Oregon, but they are just fragments. The first really good evidence comes from a creature called Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi for short. Ardi lived about 4.4 million years ago. She was a strange mix. Her pelvis was shaped to allow her to walk upright, but her feet were still built for grasping, with a big opposable toe. She was an ape that could walk on two legs on the ground, but was still very much at home in the trees. She wasn't human, but she wasn't just a regular ape anymore either. She was the start of something new. She was a hominin, a member of the branch of the ape family tree that includes us and all our extinct relatives after the split from the chimpanzee line. The story gets clearer with the next group on the scene, the Australopithecines. You've probably heard of the most famous one, Lucy. Lucy was an Australopithecus afarensis. She lived in Ethiopia about 3.2 million years ago. With Lucy, there was no doubt. She was a biped. Her skeleton shows it clearly. Her hips, her knees, her spine, they were all adapted for upright walking. We even have fossilized footprints from her species, preserved in volcanic ash in Lotoli, Tanzania. A family, maybe a father, mother, and child walked across that ash 3.6 million years ago. It's an incredible snapshot from our deep past. But if you met Lucy, you wouldn't call her human. She was small, maybe 3.5 feet tall. Her arms were long, still good for climbing. And most importantly, her brain was small. It was only a little bigger than a modern chimpanzee's brain. This is a crucial point in our story. We didn't get smart and then decide to walk upright. We stood up first. For millions of years, our ancestors were basically apes with small brains walking around on two legs. The body changed before the mind did. Bipedalism was the foundation. Everything else was built on top of it. So, for a long time, nothing much changed. These upright apes roamed parts of Africa. They probably used simple tools like sticks to dig for termites or rocks to crack nuts. Chimpanzees do that today. But then, around 2.5 million years ago, something did change. We find the first stone tools. Not just rocks used as hammers, but rocks that were deliberately shaped. Someone took one rock and struck it with another to knock off sharp flakes. These are called Oldowan tools. They are simple, just sharp-edged choppers and flakes. But they represent a huge mental leap. This wasn't just using a tool, this was making a tool. It required planning. You had to find the right kind of rock. You had to know how to hit it just right to get a sharp edge. And you had to have a reason to do it. What was the reason? Meat. With a sharp stone flake, you could do things your teeth and fingernails couldn't. You could slice through a tough animal hide. You could scrape meat off a bone. You could even smash open a bone to get the rich, fatty marrow inside. This was a new way of life. It was a new source of high-energy food, and it was probably the work of the first member of our own genus, Homo. We call this species Homo habilis, which means handyman. Homo habilis lived alongside the Australopithecines for a while. They were still pretty small, but their brains were bigger. Not a lot bigger, but enough to matter. We see the start of a feedback loop here. Making tools requires a bigger brain. Using tools to get better food provides the energy to grow a bigger brain. Hands, tools, food, and the brain all started evolving together. Was Homo habilis human? No. But the first flicker of what would become humanity was there. The idea of technology, of shaping the world to fit your needs, had been born. The next character in our story is a real game changer. This is Homo erectus. Upright man. This species shows up in Africa around 2 million years ago, and they were different. They were bigger, taller. Some of them were built a lot like us. A famous fossil skeleton called Turkana shows a teenager who would have grown to be over 6 feet tall. His body proportions were modern, long legs, short arms. He was a runner. Homo erectus was the first hominin built for endurance. They could have run for miles under the hot African sun, maybe to chase animals to exhaustion. And their brains were bigger too, significantly bigger than Homo habilis. Their tools were also better. They created a new kind of tool, the Acheulean hand axe. It was a teardrop-shaped, symmetrical, all-purpose tool. It was the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age. You could chop, scrape, cut, and dig with it. And here's the amazing thing: they made them the same way for over 1 million years. It was a stable, successful technology passed down through generations. But the biggest thing about Homo erectus is that they were the first to leave home. Around 1.8 million years ago, they walked out of Africa. We find their fossils and tools all across Asia, from Georgia to China to Indonesia. This was a new level of adaptability. To survive in these new environments, you needed more than just a good body. You needed to be smart, you needed social cooperation, you needed to solve new problems. And Homo erectus probably had another revolutionary tool: fire. The evidence for the first controlled use of fire is tricky, but it seems to start around this time. Fire changes everything. It provides warmth, it keeps predators away at night. But most importantly, it cooks food. Cooking makes food safer to eat. It makes it easier to digest. And it unlocks more calories and nutrients. This was like a supercharger for the brain. The expensive to run gut could get smaller, and all that extra energy could be diverted to the even more expensive to run brain. A campfire is also a social center. It's a place to gather, share food, and communicate. It's where a group becomes a community. If you met Homo erectus, you might see a spark of something familiar in their eyes. You would recognize their body shape. They were smart, tough, and adaptable pioneers. Were they human? We were getting closer. They were the first hominins to live a life that was recognizably different from any other animal on the planet. They were hunters and gatherers who controlled fire and spread across the globe. The world of the hominins was getting complicated. After Homo erectus, several different branches of the human family tree emerged in different parts of the world. In Europe and the Middle East, we get the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. In Asia, we get the Denisovans. And back in Africa, our own direct ancestors were evolving. For a long time, the world had several different kinds of people living in it at the same time. Let's talk about the Neanderthals. They have a bad reputation. We think of them as brutish, dumb cavemen. That's completely wrong. Neanderthals were incredibly successful. They survived in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. Their brains were, on average, even slightly larger than ours today. They were powerfully built, adapted to the cold. Their tools were sophisticated. They were expert hunters of large game like mammoths and woolly rhinos. But there's more. We have evidence that Neanderthals cared for each other. We found skeletons of old Neanderthals who had debilitating injuries. One individual from Shanidar Cave in Iraq was crippled. He had a crushed eye socket that probably left him blind in one eye, a withered arm, and severe arthritis. Yet he lived for years after his injuries. He couldn't have survived alone. His group must have fed him, protected him, and cared for him. This is compassion. This is a powerful social bond. They also buried their dead. This is a big deal. Burying someone suggests you see them as more than just a dead body. It suggests ritual. It suggests a belief in something beyond the here and now. Maybe an afterlife. We can't know for sure what they were thinking, but it's a behavior that feels deeply human. They were not us. Their minds might have worked in different ways, but they were not mindless brutes. They were a different kind of human. So where do we, Homo sapiens, fit into this story? Our species evolved in Africa. The oldest fossils that look like us are from around 300,000 years ago. For a long, long time, we were just another hominin species living in Africa. Our tools weren't much different from Neanderthal tools. There was nothing to suggest we were special. we lived and hunted and survived. We even left Africa in a few early waves, meeting and sometimes interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans. Your own DNA probably contains a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. We are a product of this ancient mixing. Then, somewhere around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, something happened. It's often called the cognitive revolution or the Great Leap Forward. The tools and artifacts associated with Homo sapiens suddenly became much more complex and varied. We see finely made blades, bone needles for sewing clothes, fish hooks, and spear throwers. But it wasn't just about tools for survival. We see the first art. Intricate geometric carvings on pieces of ochre. Ostrich eggshell beads to make necklaces. And then the explosion of cave art, like the stunning paintings in Chauvet Cave in France, made some 32,000 years ago. The lions, rhinos, and horses, so full of life they seem to move in the flickering torchlight. We see musical instruments like a flute carved from a vulture's bone. We see small carved figurines of animals and people. This is the final piece of the puzzle. This is what truly separates us. It's symbolic thought. It's the ability to have an idea in your head and represent it in the physical world. A painting of a horse is not a horse. It's a symbol of a horse. A necklace isn't just decoration. It's a symbol of identity. It says who you are, what group you belong to. This new ability was tied to language. Not just simple communication like look out a lion, but complex language. The ability to talk about things that aren't right in front of you. You can talk about the past. You can plan for the future. And most importantly, you can tell stories. You can create myths, gods, laws, and shared beliefs. This is our superpower. A chimpanzee troop is held together by personal relationships. Everyone knows everyone else. You can't have a troop of 10,000 chimpanzees. It would fall apart into chaos, but you can have a nation of 100 million humans. Why? Because we are all connected by a shared story. We believe in the same nation, the same laws, the same money. These things aren't real in a physical sense. They are fictions we all agree to believe in. And this ability to cooperate flexibly in huge numbers is what allowed Homo sapiens to spread out of Africa and across the entire globe, replacing all other hominin species along the way. So, when did we stop being apes and start being human? The answer is that there is no line. There is a long, winding road. Did it happen when we stood up on two legs about 6 million years ago? That was the first step on our path, the thing that made everything else possible. Did it happen when we started making stone tools about 2.5 million years ago? That's when we started to actively change our world to become technologists. Did it happen when Homo erectus tamed fire and walked out of Africa nearly 2 million years ago? That's when we became a global adaptable species. Did it happen with the Neanderthals, who cared for their sick and buried their dead? That's when we see the roots of compassion and spirituality. Or did it happen around 50,000 years ago with us Homo sapiens when we started painting on cave walls and telling stories? That's when our minds became what they are today. The modern human mind, capable of art, invention, and belief. Each of these was a crucial step. Being human is not one single thing. It's a package of traits that were assembled over millions of years. We have the body of an upright ape, the hands of a toolmaker, the brain of a fire user, the heart of a caregiver, and the mind of a storyteller. You can't pick one moment and say, there, that's when it happened. It's like asking when a mountain becomes a mountain. Is it when the first rock is pushed up or when it reaches its final height? The question doesn't really make sense. The mountain is the whole process of its rising. We are the product of that whole long process. We are the last surviving twig on a once bushy family tree of hominins. We are the apes that learned to walk upright, make tools, control fire, form communities, and tell stories. We never stopped being apes. We just became a very, very strange and complicated kind of ape. And the story isn't over. We are still evolving, still changing. Our journey from that ancient African ape is not just our past. It is the story that defines what we are right now.